Hey AP Psychology students, welcome back to Liam's AP Psychology. In this video, we're going to look at Unit 4 Learning Module 27, which is about Operant Conditioning. If you want to get a 5 on your AP Psychology exam in May, hop on board. I got a 5 on my AP Psychology exam, so you may better want to listen carefully to my tips and lectures on how to go through all these concepts and my wonderful examples I always provide you. Now, let's hop on board. Module 27 is about operant conditioning. And operant conditioning is a type of learning in which behavior is strengthened if followed by a reinforcer, or when it is diminished if followed by a punisher. Basically, organisms learn to associate their response or their behavior or without a consequence, which is a stimulus that may either be desirable or undesirable. This behavior is operant behavior, a behavior that causes the consequence. It is different from classical conditioning, which is a response to a stimulus. Now, we need to remember this guy's name, called Edward Thorndike. Now, Edward Thorndike was a psychologist who came up with the famous concept of law of effect. Thorndike's principle says that behaviors followed by desirable consequences become more likely, and those followed by undesirable consequences become less likely. And B.F. Skinner was another psychologist, a behaviorist, and he also built on the law of effect. Skinner used something called a Skinner box, or an operant chamber, which basically had a bar, or switch, or key, it doesn't matter, it's called a bar, switch, or key, that the animal could press as a response, which led to the consequence of having food or water as a reinforcer. So when this animal got this consequence of having food or water provided to it whenever it pressed the button, the bar, the switch, or the key, this animal is going to want to press this switch more often, because this animal has a natural instinct to desire a abundant supply of food or water, because food and water is an unconditioned stimulus that this animal naturally wants to have, right? Now, if you look at this image, you can see how there's a speaker, a light, a water tube, a bar, a switch that the animal, this white mouse can press, and also a food dispenser, right? So this is the Skinner box. Inside this box, the rat presses a bar for food reward. Outside, a measuring device, not shown in this picture, records the animal's accumulated responses of pressing the switch. Now, Skinner used this to shape the mouse's behavior. And shaping means creating new behavior by guiding the organism through reinforcers. Rewards are given to each closer approximation of the desired behavior. For example, if I want to shape the behavior of tying shoelaces onto a child, I could give it a reward if the child shows interest in the knotting process, right? Then I give a reward if the child makes an attempt to tie the shoelaces. And then I give another reward if the child makes a simple knot. And then I give another reward each time the child successfully ties shoelaces. And this reward is also called an incentive, as I mentioned in my previous video. Now, this each step the child takes is a bit closer to the action of tying shoelaces. Therefore, this is called an approximation. A discriminative stimulus is the actual stimulus that causes the response associated with reinforcement. In simpler terms, think about this situation. You want a bird to peck at images that have human faces on them, for example. Now, you can shape this behavior by reinforcing them each time they peck a human face, and not reinforce them when the bird pecks another type of image that is not the human face. Now the bird can now discriminate, which is telling the difference between images. The human face is a discriminative stimulus for this bird. Now I want you to look at these concepts and pay focus especially on this concept: positive, negative, reinforcement, punishment. So what this is: positive, when a reinforcement or punishment has the word positive in front of it. So these four words can be combined to make vocabulary words, as you see below: positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Also, a negative reinforcement and a negative punishment. So you're using these four words to make it into AP Psychology vocabulary words. And the definition of positive is adding a stimulus in AP Psychology terms. Negative, on the other hand, means removing a stimulus. And reinforcement is giving a desirable consequence repetitively to increase the desired response or behavior. So, positive reinforcement is adding positive, a desirable stimulus, after the desired response or behavior to increase reinforcement in that behavior. For example, giving money is something positive, right? Because it's adding a desirable stimulus. It's also a positive thing because it makes you feel happy, right? Let's say money was given for good grades, and good grades is a desired behavior that you want to have. Because good grades is a desired behavior, and because you want the money. Now, to get good grades, you will study harder, right? Because you want the money. You want the money, which is the promised reward that is going to be given to you, which is the incentive. Now, a negative reinforcement is removing an undesirable stimulus after the desired response or behavior to increase that behavior. Now, most of us have been reinforced to take pills, or to say desired behavior, to cure diseases when we have headaches, because taking pills removes headaches. And now, headaches are for removing, right? And removing is a negative thing. So, we call taking a pill to remove a disease, to be cured from a disease, a negative reinforcement, because you're removing an undesirable stimulus, which is the headache in this case. Now, punishment is giving an undesirable consequence to decrease the undesired response or behavior. A positive punishment is adding an undesirable stimulus after an undesirable response or behavior to reduce that behavior. For example, paying fines, which is positive, because you're adding an undesirable stimulus. You're paying fines. You're adding the fines to your life, right? You're adding the money, the fines, to whoever collects the fines, right? And it's negative for you. For illegal parking, which is what the city doesn't want from you, because it's an undesirable behavior, illegal parking. They're going to make it a mandate that you pay fines to the city government, because by adding positive the fines to your spendings, the city government aims to decrease the level of illegal parking. which is an undesirable behavior. Now, a negative punishment is removing negative, a desirable stimulus, after an undesirable response or behavior to reduce that behavior. For example, taking away cell phones. So the cell phone is being taken away, which is negative. And this is removing a desirable stimulus for not paying attention in class. And paying attention in class is an undesirable behavior. And as a teacher myself, Liam Jinzo Kim, it will be a highly undesirable behavior for me if you are sadly not paying attention to this video at the moment. Boom! Were you surprised? I hope not too surprised. Please pay attention to this video, right? This section is very, very, very important because in the AP Psychology test, MCQs, FRQs, they're going to consistently ask you about these concepts. You will be able to need to provide examples as I do in this lecture, and then also choose the right options in the MCQ based on these concepts. And these 4 reinforcement punishment types, I would say, in the MCQs, about 5 questions were from this concept, right? So that's a really significant amount. That's a pretty large amount that you cannot ignore, right? So please pay attention and please review your videos. Now, we're going to talk about primary and conditioned reinforcers. A primary reinforcer is an innately reinforcing stimulus, usually something that satisfies a biological need like food or warmth. A conditioned or secondary reinforcer, on the other hand, is a stimulus that reinforces because it's associated with a primary reinforcer. We are reinforced through money and candies and sweets and food because with money we can buy food and warmth with it. With food you can live, you can survive, you can obtain the proteins, the carbohydrates, the lipid fats, and also you can eat tasty stuff, right? That's why money is a conditioned and a secondary reinforcer. And there are immediate and delayed reinforcers also. And rats typically don't respond to delayed reinforcers because the rewarding will take some time after the behavior instead of having a result immediately. But humans typically do become motivated by delayed reinforcers. For example, we get paid at the end of the month from work instead of right away after when we work, right? So this annual pains, these monthly pains that you get from your jobs, this will motivate humans to do their work, right? So humans, they get affected by immediate and delayed reinforcers.